floated to be reviewed by the members. It was drafted by the United Kingdom and France. And in that resolution, it calls for a referral to the International Criminal Court for possible crimes against humanity. There's an arms embargo and a travel ban for Gaddafi's inner circle. Now, this resolution, a draft resolution, is going to be looked at again by a special session Saturday by the Security Council, and all indications are right now that it's expected to pass. Now, it has broad appeal, and that's not just from Western nations. There has been a unified voice of the international community that something needs to be done in Libya, and it appears as though Saturday is possibly when the Security Council will actually do something.
Let's take a quick look at the sanctions that are being proposed against Gaddafi's regime by Washington. The U.S. is planning to freeze the assets held inside America by Libya's leader and his 4 children. And all U.S. banks have been put on notice for any sudden movement of funds from Libya. And all U.S. military assistance will now be cut off. These measures coming just shortly after the United States had finally managed to get the last of its people out of the country. Now, moving on, an attack in Iraq on the country's largest oil refinery has managed to shut that refinery down. Officials say unknown gunmen burst into the Beji plant, which is 180 kilometers north of Baghdad, shooting dead staff and planting bombs. Jane Araf is live in Iraq's capital, Baghdad, with more on this. Jane, what's the latest?
Tamor, it's a serious security breach at one of Iraq's biggest oil installations. This time, it's not the oil fields, it's not the pipelines. It is the biggest refinery, the one that takes in crude oil and puts out gasoline and other essential items. And we spoke to the deputy director of the refinery, and he tells us that at about 4 this morning, gunmen actually infiltrated part of the refinery, laying bombs in key areas, including the control room, and detonating them. He says one chemical engineer died because of smoke inhalation. And as those gunmen left, and they were equipped with silencers, they sprayed the building with gunfire, seriously injuring another employee. He says staff are afraid to come back, and they're working not just on the repairs, but on shoring up that security that allowed them to infiltrate. Tamor?
Jane, the way you're describing it, it sounds like an extremely well-planned and professional operation.
It does. It's quite chilling. It's not the usual attack we've come to expect where there's murder and mayhem and indiscriminate killing. This seemed to be very carefully planned out. They entered the building, according to the deputy manager, without the protection facility service attached to the Interior Ministry actually noticing that they were in the building. And when there, they seemed to make a point of actually putting those bombs where they would inflict the most damage. But the damage, of course, is also to the confidence of the people who work there. The deputy director says it could be some weeks before they're back at work.
All right, Jane Araf live in Baghdad. Thanks, Jane. Let's get to Saadallah Fatih, an oil expert and a former advisor to Iraq's oil industry. He's also a former head of the energy studies at OPEC and joins us live from Dubai. Mr. Fatih, thank you for being with us. Just quickly, what do you think the implications of this are, the shutting down of Iraq's biggest refinery?
Well, as you say, it is the biggest refinery, and actually it supplies almost half the petroleum products to the country at this point in time, and therefore it is very significant indeed.
Is this a particularly important factor on the global oil markets? I mean, Iraq's contribution to global oil supply over the past 6 or 7 years has been fairly minimal, but people have been putting a lot of faith in the fact that the country can ramp up its production fairly sharply now.
Well, I think its biggest implication is on the local market to start with, and it will have no implication on Iraq's ability to export oil. On the contrary, the exports from Iraq may increase a little bit because this refinery is now down.
That's the particular significance of this one event, though. If we can look at the broader context, as Jane was saying to us there, this looks like a well-planned operation by people who want to disrupt the oil industry in Iraq. Now, with the international community already seeing oil above $100 a barrel, with so much emphasis being placed on Iraqi supplies, and the government there, as you know, increasing its estimates of Iraqi supply by 30% only a couple of months ago. What is the future going to look like? Because if we have a concerted campaign by professional people to disrupt that supply, it could have major implications down the road, couldn't it?
Oh, yes, indeed. I mean, this has to be viewed in context of what is happening in Iraq with the protests that are going on in many cities. And this is the first effect on the oil industry. So it could happen somewhere else. And this calls for a quick resolution to what is going on in Iraq, to answer the queries of people. Thousands of people are on the street in order to avoid horrible things like this incident in Beiji.
Just very quickly, that increase in Iraq by its estimated oil supplies, recoverable supplies a couple of months ago, they suddenly said, oh, look, we've discovered 30% more than we thought we had. How credible was that move, do you think?
Well, I mean, we could talk at length about this thing, I mean, we have no way of verifying any government's claim, whether it is in Iraq or somewhere else, about what they discover and what they don't discover. So, I mean, we have to take it at face value, which is what's happening all over the world.
All right, and what we're seeing right now all over the region is worrying the market, it seems, quite a lot. What do you think the oil price future is going to look like amidst all of this?
Well, I mean, if this violence continues across the region and if it involves other producing countries, then it will affect the market significantly. The market is already at a high price, which is unjustified by supply and demand balances or by any other factor in the oil industry and the international market. Therefore, I'm afraid the political situation in the region is going to be significant in the evolution of prices in the next few weeks or months.
Saad Al-Afati in Dubai. Thank you for talking to us. Now, still to come on the programme, we'll have a report from our correspondent inside Libya with the latest that's happening there. Plus, engineering a state, how southern Sudan is to go about creating jobs for its citizens. And find out why this popular creature failed to become Russia's Olympic mascot.
Well, across Japan, we are seeing some very nice weather. That will start to change as we go into the next couple of days. Right here on the satellite image, you notice that there's no clouds. That's all to do with high pressure in the region. All those clouds have moved towards the east. That was the last storm we saw. But the next storm is coming out here from the west across China. Now, watch what happens as we go into the next day on Sunday. All kinds of rain as well as snow pushing into first the Korean Peninsula, where we could see, believe this or not, 300 to 400 millimeters of snow in their forecast just to the northeast of Seoul. Tokyo, Osaka still looking nice, but that's not going to last long. On Monday, all of this activity will start to push in your direction. As we make our way down towards China, we're still looking at a lot of clouds, low clouds indeed, or in the forecast. We have seen low clouds all week long. They really haven't seen the sun too much. We are looking at Hong Kong at 23, Hanoi at 23 as well, but Manila is still very warm and very humid at 29 degrees for them. And then over towards India, we are still seeing some very nice conditions, but the temperatures are warming up. In Pakistan, we have seen the temperatures go up 1 degree every day. We're expecting to see about 31 degrees in their forecast. But what we need to watch very carefully is down here towards the southeast in that area of rain pushing up towards Sri Lanka. If it starts to rain any harder, we could be looking at some localized floodings there.
People talk about televising the revolution. It's tweeting the revolution, Facebooking the revolution, videotaping the revolution.
A new world driven by new media.
This is a very peculiar moment in media history.
Nobody can force me in 2011 to watch whatever I don't want to watch.
Analyzing the media's role in shaping modern history. The Listening Post, at this time on Al Jazeera.
Hello again. Let's recap the main stories this hour. The US President Barack Obama has imposed sanctions on Libya's leader Muammar Gaddafi and 4 of his children, and the United Nations chief Ban Ki-moon has urged the UN Security Council to take concrete action over the Libyan crisis. But Libya's leader, Muammar Gaddafi, has made another defiant appearance on state television, telling his supporters he will fight to the end. Well, within the last hour, we've managed to speak to Isa Musa from the city of Al-Baida in the east of Libya. He's described himself as an independent, and this is what he had to tell us.
The entire eastern provinces are under the control of the revolutionaries, and they have been joined by elements from the police as well as the armed forces. And we are gaining momentum. We have formed committees to run the daily affairs of life, including necessary aid for the injured and supplies. The youth are staying up all night to provide protection for civilians. The protesters are planning to march on the capital now, but these things are being taken care of secretly because the roads leading to Tripoli are not entirely safe. They are safe up to a certain point, and the regime still controls a large segment of that road. And they carry out inspections and searches. The Al-Saidi battalion on the coastal road seems to carry out thorough inspections, so the entire eastern provinces will be on the march to liberate the western side of the country. This is taking place secretly with the help of the army and police.
Now, in Egypt, there have been angry confrontations between activists and soldiers 2 weeks after President Hosni Mubarak stepped down. The protesters want the military government to replace the cabinet that had been appointed by Mubarak. Let's go live to Cairo and join Anita McNaught. Anita, first of all, what was the size of these protests? What happened in the square last night?
Well, this was unexpected, and the main protest had in fact long finished. The curfew, as it's been set in the previous days, was enacted at midnight. There were still a few people in the square, a couple of hundred, we understand, at which point the military police moved in. And there was, they're calling them scuffles. It was more serious than that. There were batons used, there were tasers used. People weren't hospitalized, but they were, some of them badly hurt. And there were a number of arrests, perhaps as many as 7. Now, what did this involve and what did this mean? What it was feared last night was that this marked a deterioration in relations between the people and the Egyptian army, which up till now has been so good. We were in the square yesterday and people were putting their kids up on the sides of tanks to take their photographs. The warm relations are being maintained. But last night it was of a different order, and in fact the people wielding the batons were not the regular army, they were the military police. They're the men in red berets. And this morning, as a result